The first thing we need to look at when it comes to Stewart Copeland's drumming with the Police is he avoids one in his drum grooves. There are tons of examples of this, but King of Pain, where he's playing the bass drum on the upbeats, or maybe we've got a song like Roxanne, which is a very, very simple rock drum beat. Really, it's 1 and 2. That is the normal version of that, but what Stewart did was he moved that kick drum pattern to 1 and 2. Instead of 1 and, it's a very simple rock bass drum pattern, but he moved it over 1/8 note and he dances around 1 that entire song with the drum groove. This one thing is proliferated throughout their song catalog. And it really gets its basis in another point I'm going to make in just a second, but before we get there, we've got to look at how in his drum fills, the next thing in his drum fills, he dances around 1, he plays over the bar line, and he ends them or starts them on odd parts of the beat.
It's amazing that you could play that drum fill in 9 beats.
Right?
It's fantastic.
Just because it's a little confusing for the bass playing element.
I can list off a ton of examples, but 3 that come to mind would be Demolition Man, Regatta de Blanc, which is just a masterclass in drumming all around, and then one we already mentioned, King of Pain. Over and over and over again, we see Stewart starting a drum fill in the middle of a measure or a phrase, then he plays over the bar line and doesn't end it on 1, he ends it on 4, or he ends on the and of 4 or 2, almost anywhere but 1. With Stewart's drum fills and his drum grooves, it is very interesting how he dances around and avoids 1, and this really starts to carve out a niche for him when it comes to his style. It also makes it very hard to decide where 1 is when learning his stuff. Okay, this next thing that makes it so interesting and so hard to dissect Stewart's drumming, I throw back to my first one and really my second one, and that is his incorporation of Jamaican drumming and world rhythms into a rock setting. In particular, we've got Jamaican and Afro-Jamaican styles showing up throughout their song catalog. To really get Stewart, you've got to do a deep dive into the roots of reggae drumming and understand things like the song styles of Nyabingi, Jamaican boogie, we've got burro drumming, Jamaican ska, rocksteady, and so much more. Here's a great example of a deep cut from their catalog that mystified me for a little while as far as like, where did this come from? This sounds so out of place in a rock setting. Even for the reggae stylings that he usually put in there, it just seemed out of place, and that's the song, The Bed's Too Big Without You. This always struck me as a super odd reggae groove until I started digging into the drumming of Lloyd Knibb, who pioneered the burro style of drumming on the drum set. Lloyd played with the Scotalites, among others. Now listen to their song, it's called Burro Style, and then go listen to The Bed's Too Big Without You. It makes that snare part make complete sense. All of these different styles under the canopy of Jamaican music or Afro-Jamaican music have their own vibe, they have their own feel, and it really helps you understand exactly what Stewart was going for when he was trying to merge those into a rock setting, using Jamaican and world rhythms. All of these different styles under the canopy of Jamaican drumming or Afro-Jamaican drumming or world rhythms really have their own nuances, their own vibe, their own feel. And if you start to dig into them, it really helps you understand what Stewart was trying to do when he was merging them with a popular form of rock and roll.
My source of licks has been South America and, of course, the West Indies. The main rock and roll stuff, it's always a backbeat, which goes on...
1, 2.
That's right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now reggae turns the whole rhythm upside down, but over in Jamaica they got it wrong or something. I don't know how they ended up. They turned the whole thing upside down and invented something really different. And the difference is that it lands, they use the bass drum in a different place. It goes...
I've always loved this next one about his drumming with the Police, and that is he plays with tons of energy pushing the beat or playing on top of the beat. I just had a live call with my students the other day. I have live Zoom calls every week with my students. I've got an online drum school. I would love for you to go check that out. All the links are in the video description. And we were talking about, they were asking about what is pushing the beat, what is pulling the beat, what's playing in front of the beat, what's playing behind the beat. Our personalities come out in our drumming. And after watching tons of interviews with Stewart, he is one of my favorite rock drummers, I think this is just the case with him. Playing on top of the beat or pushing the beat has a lot more to do with the energy of the song. Now, if we're rushing, that means we're actually speeding up, but playing on top of the beat means the beat is here and we're just playing just slightly ahead of it. You've got other players that play a little slightly behind it naturally, like a John Bonham. But pushing the beat or playing on top of the beat is sitting slightly ahead of where the beat has been established for that song, hopefully without rushing or speeding up. Does that mean he never played behind the beat or played on the backside of the beat? No. But the majority of his catalog with the Police, you see him using this energy to kind of push the music and give it a feel. This next one is a small one, but it's so hard to grasp, especially for drummers that have been raised in more of a Western music or Western popular music where 2 and 4 on the snare drum is so prolific. And that is utilizing the bass drum in very unique ways and where you're placing it in the beat. Obviously with the Jamaican influence, there's a lot of placement on the 2 and the 4, but you also see him place it on 3 to give kind of a halftime feel. You also see him placing it on the upbeats like King of Pain. I mean, I can name off song after song. We've got Hole in My Life, Spirits in the Material World, Murder by Numbers, Roxanne, Wrapped Around Your Finger, King of Pain. All of these have unique bass drum placements, and many times the bass drum takes the place of the snare drum, or it's a unique bass drum placement with 2 and 4 strong on the snare drum to give that rock leaning. Again, we're going back to merging rock and roll with a world rhythm. I told you earlier this video was sponsored by Bose and Sweetwater, and they actually helped me solve a massive problem that we were having here at the studio, and I've been bringing people here to let them listen to this thing ever since. So as you can tell, it's still kind of a wreck. We just got done with the 2024 SDS camp season. The problem we had was when we're all here, we've got like 13, 14 people in a room, and we had this PA system, which is fine, but it was like 2 speakers up there, and if you were sitting here, it was just pinging you in the ear, so that person back there really couldn't hear, but this person's, you know, all hoodied up and headphoned up so that they, you know, can protect their ears. So in walks this Bose system. When I was looking for systems to fix this issue, I immediately started looking at Bose because ever since I was a kid, they're kind of like the gold standard when it comes to audio. But it's not often that you get something that lives up to what you've heard. When I first got it here, I immediately unboxed it and I wanted to just kind of like test it out. So I put the whole unit at 50%, and then I put my phone at 50%. I actually couldn't stand the room. It was way too loud, which was quite astounding at the size of this thing. We also often have to carry a PA system out to the porch because we got practice pads out there, so we do warm-ups when we're doing the drum camps. This thing is super easy to pick up with one hand and take out there. I'm actually not a tech guy. I'm not a tech nerd. I tend to have the same technology and keep it forever. So when I get something like this and then I'm bringing people actually to the studio to be like, no, you gotta hear this thing. It's got a line array system with the speakers, which simply means that the speakers are all kind of pointed in a different direction. I'm sure there's more to that technology, but it kind of spreads the sound out. So no matter where you stand in the room, you're getting an even distribution of that sound. It's also got easy Bluetooth capability and a built-in subwoofer. You can hook a mic up to it. It's got a built-in 3-channel mixer. You can actually control it remotely with the free app that they have. It actually has a tone port input that allows you to expand how many inputs are in this thing. The litmus test was the people that came here and the camps that went through, they got to hear it, everybody loved it. So if you're a small group, if you're a solo artist, if you just want to hype up the party, if you want something in your house that is great, seriously, this is a great thing. I'm actually going to take it to my house in a couple weeks. We've got a party coming up and we're going to use it there. You can check out all the links there in the video description to see for yourself how great a unit this is. Another one that many people miss is he had a unique setup and a unique tuning when it came to the drums. This really begins to define a player's style whenever they dig into their tuning and their setup. I did a video not long ago on 2 from Sleep Token. He has dialed in his setup, his choice of cymbals, his tuning, and it really stylistically begins to define him in that band. The same goes with Stewart. He loved to use smaller drums, smaller cymbals. We're talking like 12, 13-inch hi-hats, lots of splash cymbals. At any time you may see something like a rototom up there.
One day they invented these octabands here, which are kind of cool looking, which is the main reason I got them, but they also, intriguingly, actually sound really cool. For reggae, they fit really good, you know.
He would then take all of these and pitch them up high. This gave him incredible attack and response, and also some of it threw back to, again, that Jamaican influence.
Part of getting the sound to project to the audience, higher pitched drums, smaller, higher pitched drums, which could crack through.
If you want to tackle Stewart's drumming, you've got to also get comfortable with lots of cross stick and lots of ride cymbal bell work. Get just as comfortable playing the cross stick when you're playing the music of the Police as you are playing the snare drum. Again, this goes back to, this is a very small thing, a nuance almost. But again, it's those small nuances that define the style of a player, makes them different from other players. Stewart is a master at taking the seemingly simplistic and making it seem harder than it actually is, in his placement of the bass drum, in his avoidance of one, in his how he's tuning his drums, all of that. And this is one of those items as well. Cross stick is not a sound you hear in a lot of big rock, and at the time with punk rock, which is how they came up and coming out of that scene, there wasn't a lot of ride cymbal bell work being done in punk rock. However, in world rhythms, in Jamaican music, in Afro-Jamaican music, you have a lot of bells in there. This next one, he makes the old new or gets creative with the things he already knows. An instance where he does this that I've already mentioned is Regatta de Blanc. I'm telling you, this is an incredible song, just a masterclass in drumming. Once he settles into the groove, it's a typical halftime groove, but he took the snare drum and moved it back one beat where it sits on 4 instead of 3. A small thing that completely changes the feel of the song. Another example of this is Murder by Numbers, which is in 6/8 or 12/8, however you want to think about that. He puts the kick drum where the snare backbeat would usually go in a 6/8 or 12/8 feel, and then he takes the rim click and plays it on the upbeats. Two very simple things that make it sound way more complex and disguise where one is. And one more example that I've already mentioned is Roxanne, where he takes a very simple rock groove, almost the We Will Rock You front portion of that groove, instead of playing it one hand, and he plays it and 2. It feels and sounds completely different. He found unique ways to explore and play very common drum beats and drum fills.
By the way, here's a trick for any young drummer who wants to be on the front of Drum World magazine. It's really easy. Basically what you do is you take every rhythm that you play, move it 1 quarter note to the left. You got to tell the band you're doing it or else they'll get confused. Just take every, see, I moved every beat that I play and moved it 1 quarter note to the right, which is why I got Rich and Famous. So 1 beat to the right is taken, but 1 beat to the left is still free. It's still available for anyone. The first person who hears this and runs down to their band room and does this is going to be Rich and Famous.
And he's one of the drummers that brought the hi-hat to the forefront. Topper Headon of The Clash was doing this some at that time as well, but this happens in many of their songs, and an example that comes immediately to mind is Walking on the Moon. Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic is also another great example of his hi-hat work, and what he did was he took an often overlooked element of the drum set in a rock setting and brought it to the forefront. That hi-hat is so often relegated to it's playing 1/8 notes, or it's playing 16ths, or it's playing quarters, but he didn't believe it. He wanted to take and bring it to the forefront and let it have its moment. And obviously this goes back to that big third thing we talked about, is the influence of Jamaican music and Jamaican drumming on what he was doing. And before we get to this last one, which is one of the things I love about him, I just wanted to let you know the 2025 SDS camp registration has opened for next year's camp season. We do 6 of them here at the SDS studios. I'd love to have you come. A few of them have already sold out, and I don't want you to miss out. So if that's something you're interested in, please just follow the link below. Shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you. He uses the hi-hat and rim click together in really tasty combinations. Now I know we've mentioned the hi-hat and I know we've mentioned the rim click, but it's how he integrates them together that makes it so special. The interplay of them makes it sound so hip, and we go back to Regatta de Blanc. Again, you've got to go listen to it. Like, pause the thing, go listen to it right now. It's just such great drumming. Walking on the Moon in the sections after the choruses is another great example of his hi-hat and rim click interplay. And it's very well known they also utilize some studio magic like reverb and delay to make those hi-hat and rim click sections sound even cooler.